Now, there are a lot of regulations around social media currently, but not as much as there are around other forms of media that have been around longer. If you look at television, radio, different forms of media outside of the internet, you have the FCC, which regulates that stuff. Movies, Motion Picture Association, but they give movies ratings, and if a movie has an R rating or higher, people of a certain age cannot go see it, technically legally. So there's a lot of regulation there. There's a lot of regulation with the FCC around certain things that you can and cannot say on the radio and on television. And certain things you can and cannot show visually unless they have a certain rating, or they're on certain cable channels like HBO and things like that, subscription type channels. So there is a lot more regulation with those forms of media, than there are with social media. Social media is more regulated by the companies themselves. Like X does their own regulation for, based on what Elon Musk wants, and Facebook, Meta, based on what Mark Zuckerberg decides for his platforms and Instagram. So it's sort of self-governed, but there's really not much government regulation around social media right now. Although I think we are, because it's been around for quite a while now, so is the internet. I think we are headed to a point where there probably will begin to be some sort of regulation from the government on how we use these platforms, because we have enough time with them. Basically the social experiment has been going on for about 2 decades now. Think about Facebook was invented in, I think, 2003, back when Mark Zuckerberg was in college. You're talking over 20 years now for at least Facebook. Instagram's a little younger, and X and some of those other platforms. But, the social experiment has been going on for a few decades. We have enough information as to how it impacts society. Biggest one being the millennials, because we grew up with it for the most part. Half our lives without it, half with it. So you can actually see the impacts it has, before it's in your life and after it's in your life for the same person, because that person has grown up both with and without it. Gen Z is a little different. They mostly grew up with it their whole lives. And now we're heading into Gen Alpha, which is the latest generation that is growing up with it from birth, which is going to be both good and bad. It's going to be good in the sense that they're going to be the generation that's so fluid and so naturally connected to this form of technology, not just social media, but iPhones, iPads, all that stuff, computers themselves. They're going to surpass every generation in terms of their abilities, manipulate, innovate, and use the technology way beyond any generation before them, because they have it in their lives since birth. Many of them are going to become like an extension of their body. Not talking about the implanting and things like that. I know some of that stuff Elon Musk is doing, but I'm talking more from a sense of the fact that it's in their lives, their entire life, from basically the time they're babies, when their parents sit them down at the table and put a screen in front of them, or go out to a restaurant and hand them a tablet so that they will leave them alone and be quiet. This generation, the positive effects of that are going to be that they're going to surpass any generation before them on how to use the technology, how to innovate, how to make it better for the future generations. The bad thing will be they will never know a life without that stuff. Not to mention all the negative things that come of constantly having a radiated device around you. The radiation could definitely affect them over time. Maybe they end up having gene mutations. Maybe they end up developing cancer more frequently. Not to mention, screen time, constantly staring at a blue light screen and focusing your eyes on a close object. There's a reason that your eyes are both near and farsighted. It's so that your eyes can change the depth in which they put things in focus. If you're always looking at something close up to you, eventually that does mess with the eyes to where you have trouble seeing things far away, and even close up too. It could get hard to see things closer as well. But there's a lot of negative impacts that are going to come of generations using technology to the extent that we use it. It really should be used as a tool, just like anything else, right? A carpenter doesn't walk around with a hammer on his hip all day, every day, constantly when he's working, not working, sleeping. But for some reason, we have this tool with us all the time, in our pockets, clipped to our hips, on our nightstand when we're sleeping. When we wake up, it's right there. It's the first thing most people touch. So there is a deep connection with this tool that really needs to be rethought as to how we use it. It's easy to escape. It's easy to use that technology to fill up your day, but there's a lot of bad that comes with that too. I saw a saying, and I think this is so true. If the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. And I think that there's definitely something to that. It's a distraction to a degree. If you're always on it, if it's always a part of your life, at some point you can't say, oh, I'm just, using it to increase my business, make more money, or whatever, it is you're doing with it. After a certain amount of time, you've gotten pretty much all you're going to get out of that thing. And it's more about consistency with that stuff. So if you're just doing it a little bit every day, over time, you will reap the benefits of it. But to constantly use it day and night, first thing in the morning, last thing before bed, there's an addiction element there. There's an addiction element that you are obsessed with it and it has taken over. It's now using you versus you using it. Go back to, not even back, just we need to go to a place where we use the technology that we have to better our lives. If it's making us worse in any way, it's not being used correctly, and then we need to change how we use it. I'm not one of those people that says we need to go back to the Stone Age, everybody go back to the woods, and go back to the way things were before computers. Because no civilization in world history, besides the Puritans that came to America, has ever gone back to older forms of technology for everything, tools and everything, when newer, more effective forms were currently invented and existed in their life. People don't go backward in life, they go forward. The only reason the Puritans did is because when they came to America, they had to leave their great nation and everything that it had to offer in terms of technological advancements at that time. They had to leave all that behind to come to a barren land, which would become America, in order to pursue religious freedom. And then, obviously eventually create the new promised land. But that was a fluke, and that was because they were on a mission from God. Other than that example, I don't know any throughout history where people went backward with technology. So we're only going to go forward, especially with the advent of cryptocurrency, AI, Web3, all that stuff. We are going into a future where that stuff will be a part of our life. But you have to look at it like any form of technology. When guns were invented, we didn't, modify our bodies to make one of our arms one with the gun so that we always had a weapon at our hands disposal at all times. We made holsters and put them in the holster, or we put them in a safe, or we put them in a gun box, whatever. We have it as a tool that we use when we need it, and when we don't, we're not using it. It's the same thing with phones and laptops and tablets and all this stuff. We need to separate ourselves from those things, not implant them in our body to become more one with them. I'm not for a future of metaverse where people live inside the goggles or live inside a fake reality, because I think that there's something inherently evil about that. God created this reality, and if man's going to create a new reality, it's almost like man's trying to play God, and I can't see at this point how that would have a positive effect and further God's plan for the world. So I'm not one for that metaverse future reality where people implant computers in our brains and just blink, and that's how we're able to search on the search engines and stuff like that. But I do see a lot of positive benefits of having social media, and I can see how God has used it in this life with many different things for disseminating information, bringing it out to the masses, allowing people of like-minded beliefs and ideology to connect all around the world. Even if you've never met in person, you're able to find each other. So there are benefits to that. The power is always in the numbers. If the people are united, no matter where they are, if they're united physically in person or virtually on the internet, being united is better than being divided. And I look at the social media and the internet as a tool where you can either waste your time or you can unite, build relationships, build community, and use it as a resource for researching and finding out information, or for your business, marketing purposes, things like that. Other than that, you really got to be careful how you use the technology.